Update. Stepdad favored his sons over me and banned me from family dinners, saying I am not his family, so I planned a family trip and banned them from it, and mom finally woke up and kicked him out after divorcing him. Part 2. Fast forward a month, and I secured a full-ride scholarship to medical school. I couldn't wait to get out of that toxic household. My brother was home for a break, and he and my mom threw me a small party to celebrate my scholarship. But, of course, Emily got all depressed and made it all about herself. That same week, she was removed from her job due to overstaffing, but we all knew she was kicked out because of her own incompetence. Steve was like, "We're not coming to the party. Emily's depressed, and I cannot leave her alone." My mom got sad about it. Honestly, I was fine with them not showing up. Steve wanted mom to cancel the party or at least postpone it, but mom didn't do any of that. She asked Steve to take care of Emily if she was feeling low, but we would have the celebration anyway. At the last minute, Steve changed his mind and said he'd come, but Emily was still out of it. However, at the party, I found both of them had shown up. They sulked in the corner, making faces, but I didn't let them ruin my vibe. I enjoyed it with my mom, brother, and aunt. Mom was torn between us. She wanted to include them in our fun, but they kept their distance. Well, good for them. My aunt and brother were pissed off to see their toxicity. I narrated to them the incident that happened at mom's birthday, and they were infuriated. My brother came up with a revenge plan to go on a family trip to celebrate my success. Aunt Jenna offered to take care of my expenses, but I said I had saved some money from my part-time work and could cover it myself. I took the responsibility of planning the trip to Vegas. It was time for Steve to taste his own medicine and see how it feels to be excluded. The next day, I announced that we were taking mom on a family trip. Steve and Emily were stunned. Steve asked, "What do you mean by taking mom for a trip? Aren't we going?" I said, "No, it's a family trip, so you and Emily are out." Steve looked at mom for intervention, but mom ignored him and asked me about it. I told Aunt Jenna, my brother, and I had pitched in for this trip. Emily was fuming in anger but couldn't say anything. Mom hugged me, asking where I got the money from. I said I saved it from my paycheck. Mom was in tears, saying she was proud of me because I saved from my small part-time income and was willing to spend it on her to cover her expenses for the vacation. Steve and Emily had to put on a fake smile in front of mom. After mom went to work, Steve came to me and asked why they were excluded from the trip. I rolled my eyes and said, "Because it's a family trip, remember?" He sighed and said, "Are you holding a grudge because of that dinner thing? Let me tell you, we are over it. We can start fresh. You're moving out to build a new life for yourself. Do you want to go with this hatred? Let's use this vacation to mend the family bond," I said. "That's exactly why I'm going on this trip, to have quality time with my family. But sadly, it doesn't include you and Emily." He asked me with a straight face what he should do to get included in this trip. I said nothing could give them a spot on the vacation. I noticed desperation in Steve. He never lets mom alone with me or my brother. He was worried that we would turn mom against him. He's right, that's exactly what I'm going to do. The next morning, Aunt Jenna stopped by, and she rubbed it in Steve's face that we were going to Vegas. She teased him, saying, "Isn't that every gambler's ultimate haven?" Steve turned pale and just nodded. Aunt Jenna never liked Steve, and she always said she had a gut feeling that Steve was burning money and gambling, but he never admitted it. After Aunt Jenna left, Steve and Emily put up this act that Aunt Jenna and I were turning mom against him. Mom tried to tell Steve not to make a big deal out of it, but he was beyond reason. He stormed out with Emily, trying to guilt-trip mom into canceling the trip, but this time mom didn't give in. She said she was going on the trip whether he liked it or not. Finally, mom has started to see Steve's true colors, and I'm hoping this trip will be the wake-up call she needs. She deserves so much better than a toxic leech like Steve. Mom was waiting anxiously for Steve to come home for dinner, but he knew he'd slink back, and eventually where else would he go? And sure enough, he stumbled in with Emily, who was practically holding him up. He was wasted and face planted onto the sofa. Emily had dinner and then retreated to her room, leaving Steve to his drunken snores. The silence was deafening, no more fake smiles or sweet talk. Mom finally saw beyond the facade, and I could sense her realization. The morning of our trip, Steve and mom had a massive argument behind closed doors. I couldn't make out what they were saying, but the yelling was intense. Steve stormed out, giving us the stink eye while leaving. I made sure to lock my room. No way I'm trusting Emily with my stuff. On our way to the airport, mom was anxious and distracted, still reeling from the fight. I told her to forget about Steve and his drinking habits. He's only thinking of himself and his precious Emily. We ignored his angry texts and calls, knowing he'd only ruin the trip for mom. My priority was making sure my mom had a peaceful trip, and I was glad we could make that happen. The trip was a blast. We stayed at the Bellagio, and it was amazing. The mountains were stunning, the pool was lively, and we even tried some of that infamous Vegas buffet. What a wild ride. But the highlight was taking my mom to the Mob Museum. She was beyond happy to be there. Everything about the trip was just incredible. No Steve, no Emily, just us and a whole lot of fun. My mom deserved it, and I'm so glad we could make it happen. One evening in Vegas, I had the chance to fill mom in on all the drama that had gone down. I broke down in tears and told her everything: Emily's insults, Steve's lectures, the whole shebang. My brother had had enough too, and he told mom we couldn't keep living like this. Mom was upset and said she would talk to Steve, but she was still hesitant to kick him out, saying they were struggling and she couldn't just leave him. Yeah, right. Meanwhile, I'm eagerly waiting for our return, curious to see how Steve and Emily will react when we get back. Your mom's epiphany about Steve's true colors is long overdue, but it's good to see her finally catching on. As for the trip itself, it sounds like it was everything you hoped for: glamorous, fun, and completely free of Steve and Emily's toxic shadow. Here's hoping things can change once your mom speaks to Steve. You can click on share and more to see if there is a part 3.